is News Conference Extra with Conan Nolan.
Good morning and welcome to News Conference Extra, a special segment of Today in LA Weekend. I'm Conan Nolan. Well, it was a big week for those interested in criminal justice reform in Sacramento. First, they got one of their own to be nominated for California's next Attorney General, Robert Bonta, Democratic Assemblyman from Oakland. And then the California Supreme Court ruled that if you're an indigent defendant in a criminal case, you don't have money for bail, you can't be held on bail. As a result of a decision by the Supreme Court, one of those supporting that opinion was Bob Hertzberg, member of the California State Senate. He's the Senate Majority Leader, Democrat from Van Nuys, and somebody who has authored legislation that would get rid of bail in the state of California. So, Senator, thanks for taking the time. I assume that you are in favor of this decision, but from what I read, you believe it doesn't go far enough.
Well, I'm ecstatic about the Supreme Court decision. It vindicates all of the arguments that we've been talking about now for 6 years. And so I'm just ecstatic about it. Because the bottom line is that bail is not about public safety. It's about the person's ability to pay and to get out. But it doesn't go far enough, because what it does is it sets up a framework that says you've got to look to a person's ability to pay. Absolutely the right thing to do. It maintains bail. But in nonviolent cases, we need to do, and what I have a bill now with Senator Skinner and with Assemblyman Bonta that basically says in nonviolent cases you shouldn't be able to detain people unless the court makes a finding. The big difference between bail and what we're doing now is that this is a situation where a court can look at factors. Domestic violence. Bail industry made an unbelievable amount of money during the pandemic because of all the domestic violence cases. Think about this. Somebody has the money to bail out and they go back and beat up their spouse. I mean, the judge in our bill will say, no, you could look at the person, you can detain them, or you can put additional conditions on. This just changes the game from being people that are hurt tremendously by not having the money and get stuck in jail versus having a judge look at the circumstances going forward.
That argument was made to voters, though. They voted to keep bail, cash bail. Why should their wisdom be overturned?
Well, that wasn't the argument that was made. That was the argument that we made in the legislature when we passed this and signed by the governor, working together with the justice. What happens what the ballot measure was about was algorithms. The tool that was used, this risk assessment tool, was argued to be unsafe and unfair and biased and all that stuff. That was one argument. And the bureaucracy that was set up under the last bill, the SB 10 that I authored, was the argument. It wasn't that nobody once argued that, oh my God, the system's fair. Oh my God, this is just. They just argued the tools that we used. So what did we do? We jettisoned those tools and we came up with a better approach going forward. That's all.
So listen, cash bail is imperfect. It's part of an imperfect judicial system. The argument, though, in the past, we wanted to err on the side of the victim and society. And now, to some might say, listen, now we're erring on the side of the suspect and the perpetrator. For a woman who now looks at this and says, my abuser is now going to go into court and say, I don't have money. Okay, great, you can leave. And that this is a system that's designed no longer for me, it's designed for him. How do you respond?
Boy, I couldn't disagree with that argument more. Think about this for just a moment, Conan. Think about this. In the first case, if there is zero bail, and a court will look to the circumstances to see, look at you in the eye, look at the record, look at the history of domestic violence and say, sorry, you're staying in court. That's the system we're going to have under our bill and under the Supreme Court. Under the current bail structure, where the bail industry made a ton of money during the pandemic because of all of this, somebody has money, they write a check, nobody analyzes the public safety risk that person has. Nobody analyzes the risk that says, oh, this person is going to go back and beat up their spouse. And they just write a check and they go right back home and they get back into it. So it's exactly opposite. What this does is this gives, in these cases, the judge the ability to look at the facts rather than have a piece of paper that's basically a price list for your liberty. And that's the big difference. And that's the unfairness in terms of how it impacts all kinds of communities, impacts people who have no money, and really gets to the essence of what we're trying to do with justice. And by the way, this is not something that's some far left idea. Kentucky does this, okay? They've been doing it for years. I went to Kentucky, Washington, New York, New Jersey, Illinois just did it. A lot of counties do this. And because you can text people to come back, you don't have to turn their lives upside down. They lose their work, their apartment, their rent. They cop a plea. This is really a fair and not a difficult system. And by the way, just so you know, the current district attorney is the one who appealed this case to the Supreme Court. Otherwise, it would have been a law a year and a half ago.
Right. I should point out the Association of Deputy District Attorneys would take issue with that. They say that regardless of anybody's ability to make bail, they're very concerned about whether that person reoffends or is a threat to a victim. But in any case, so a new Attorney General has been nominated, Robert Bonta, Democrat of Oakland. You've worked with him. You've co-authored legislation with him. What's your assessment?
Yeah, look, he's been a friend of mine for a long time. I helped him get elected to the city council in Alameda. He's a Rhodes Scholar. He's a bright fella. I did work with him on bail on SB 10 and on this matter before. And look, I'm hopeful. I'm positive always. But, I've been around a long time. And I'm someone who makes sure that when we have these young politicians that they keep their promises and push them hard to do the right thing and keep working. That's what I'll do with him and everybody else. I do this with all the elected officials. I really push them hard. We've got a real responsibility to the public, and we can't screw it up.
Yeah, you don't want to screw it up. Bob Hertzberg, California State Senator from Van Nuys, Democrat, thanks for taking the time.
Hey, thanks for doing this program. You do great stuff. I really appreciate it, Conan.
You're very kind.